Hello students, I'm Sonia Nayan, your biology educator for class 10, and today we are starting a new chapter, that is our environment. And in this video we are going to discuss part number 1 of this chapter, that is ecosystem and its components. Okay, hope you all are doing well. Now let's start with the chapter. Okay, first here we have the contents of chapter. What we are going to cover in this video is we will discuss ecosystem, types of ecosystem, components of ecosystem, abiotic components, biotic components. All these topics we are going to discuss. So overall we are going to discuss in this chapter ecosystem, which is very important topic for your examination. First here we have what is environment. Environment is everything that surrounds us. What are the things which surrounds us? For example, we are surrounded by trees. In our surrounding, what we see? Trees, right? And the people who live on hills, they see mountains in their surrounding. Apart from these, what we have? We have animals. Okay, we have different kind of animals in our surrounding. What else? Many insects. So if we try to count these things which are present in our surrounding, we have so many things in our surrounding. Okay, and all those things will constitute our environment. So what is environment? Environment is everything that surrounds us. Very simple answer. The organism which lives here, that organism can be human or can be any animal. Okay, for that organism, this place is the environment. Now if we see what are the components of environment, in general in the environment we only see two types of components. Okay, either the thing is living or non-living. We can write down here that in environment we have two types of things: living first, second is non-living. Now in science we use a term for living to describe a thing living is biotic. The living things are known as biotic and the non-living one are known as abiotic. If I try to recall you the example of biotic things, what are the abiotic things present in our surrounding? The mountains are made up of soil, rocks, these are non-living. So these are abiotic. Air is non-living. This is abiotic. Temperature, okay, in our surrounding we have a certain temperature, right? If we are sitting in a room, we have a room temperature. Then if we are in hill area, then what we have? We have a very low temperature. There we will feel cold. So in surrounding there is a specific temperature. That temperature is abiotic, that is non-living. So now if we see biotic, we have many animals, many organisms in our surrounding. We are not alone here. Apart from human, we have so many organisms, so many animals in our surrounding. Those are known as biotic. Now you know what is living, non-living, biotic, abiotic. Next we have ecosystem. From previous slide we know that we have an environment, that is our surrounding, and in that surrounding we have two type of things: biotic and abiotic. If these things are present in our surrounding, they must be performing certain functions. Okay, they must be doing some activities, and those activities also affects us. We affect other animals activities and their activities too affects us. Okay, this is not the case that they are performing their function and we are performing our activities and we have no connection. We have no connection in between us. Okay, there is no such thing. We are interacting continuously. Okay, different organisms are in connection, they are interacting. An ecosystem, when these components of environment, let's say in environment we have biotic components and what we have abiotic components. Biotic and abiotic component will interact with each other and this forms an ecosystem. So we can say that whenever any organism perform function, it will affect its surrounding as well, and as there is any change in surrounding, then that change will affect a organism. Okay, let's say if there is any change in temperature, that change in temperature will going to affect us or not? It will going to affect us. Okay, so our body will respond to a temperature. Let's say if there is high temperature, then our body will respond to that temperature. Okay, our body starts sweating. So this is how the surrounding affects us and our actions too affects surrounding. Let's say we are using vehicles, okay, we are using various things that causes pollution. What will that pollution do? That pollution will affect other organisms as well as abiotic factors. Okay, that pollution will lead to low quality of air. Okay, this is how we are affecting our environment. So here is the scenario that environment affects us and our activities affects environment. Both are the cases we see here. We are affected by our surrounding. Any organism is affected by its surrounding and that organism also affects its surrounding. So there is a connection between organism and the surrounding. So they are in continuous process of interacting with each other. When they are interacting with each other, they are performing certain function. This interaction between different organisms and between different organisms and with their surrounding is known as ecosystem. Ecosystem is the functional unit of environment. If we try to understand now the definition of ecosystem, what is ecosystem? Ecosystem is a community. Okay, whenever I use this word community means, in very simple terms, community means different organisms like insects, humans, okay, then what else, lions and cattles. Okay, they are different organisms, and if they are living together, what will we say? That this is a community is made up of different organisms. If we understand this, ecosystem is a community of living organisms, means in ecosystem we have different type of organisms like plants, animals and microorganisms like bacteria. So ecosystem is a community means in a community we have different type of organisms living together. Human, plants, animals, microorganisms like bacteria will constitute an community, and community is what? Ecosystem. Now, these plants, animals, microorganisms will interact with each other and also with their physical environment. This is known as ecosystem. Now, wherever you explain this definition ecosystem, you have to use this word community of living organism and this interaction term. Okay, these organisms which are present in a community, they will interact with each other and their physical environment. This is how environment function. So the functional unit of environment is ecosystem. Now here if you see this picture is the depiction of ecosystem. This is ecosystem. Okay, see here what we have, river is a ecosystem. It's an example of ecosystem. Here what we have, grass, land and grass. This is again an ecosystem. Now if you see in this ecosystem we have different type of animals. Here we have a cattle, here we have plant, these are clouds, sky, air. So we have so many components in a ecosystem, abiotic components as well as biotic components. Ecosystem can be of two types: terrestrial ecosystem, okay, terrestrial ecosystem, and the second type we have aquatic ecosystem. These are the two types of ecosystem we have. Okay, if I say terrestrial ecosystem, what does it mean? Terrestrial means land. Terrestrial ecosystem is the normal ecosystem which consists of soil and land. Aquatic ecosystem is the ecosystem which consists of water. Okay, which consists of water. The major portion of this ecosystem is water. Okay, aquatic means water. If we see the example of aquatic ecosystem, what example we can have? Lakes, river. These are the examples of aquatic ecosystem. And what is and the example of terrestrial ecosystem? Forests. Forests are the example of terrestrial ecosystem. Now you know the difference between terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem. Now if we see this picture, here we have a river, okay, and this river is an example of aquatic ecosystem, and these mountains are example of terrestrial ecosystem. On the basis of creation, we have two type of ecosystem: natural ecosystem and artificial ecosystem. This is natural ecosystem, and in this picture we have a aquarium. We have an aquarium, and this aquarium is an example of artificial ecosystem. This is natural ecosystem which is made by nature, and this is artificial ecosystem, this is man-made. So we can write down here that this is natural, made by nature, and this is man-made. Man-made ecosystem is known as artificial ecosystem, and the best example of this artificial ecosystem is aquarium. And the natural ecosystem is the ecosystem which is present on its own. It is not made by man. First we'll see natural ecosystem. Okay, natural ecosystem present on its own. It is not made by man. This is the definition of natural ecosystem. Now if we see the examples of natural ecosystems are lakes, oceans. Okay, these are the examples of natural ecosystem. Second type is artificial ecosystem, means man-made. This ecosystem is not present on its own. This is made by man. So we can write down here that this ecosystem is man-made ecosystem. If we see the examples of man-made ecosystem, what examples we have? First is garden. What else we have? Aquarium. So these are the examples of artificial ecosystem, and you have to remember examples and definition of these two types of ecosystem. Next we have a very important topic, components of ecosystem. So there are two components of ecosystem, abiotic components, the non-living one, and the biotic components which are living. There are two pictures to make it easy for you to understand these components, abiotic components and biotic. If you see this picture, here we have what we have here. We have sunlight, wind, rain, water, and this is soil. Sunlight, wind, rain, water, soil, many components. These components come under abiotic components. These are the non-living components. Okay, so these components are the non-living components, and these are present in our environment. So they are the components of ecosystem, and as they are non-living, they are known as abiotic components. Okay, means they are non-living components which are present in our surrounding. And if I ask you examples of abiotic components, what example you will give? You will say sunlight, wind, water, soil, rain. These are the abiotic components. Now if we see here the biotic components, the living components. Okay, living are living things we know. Okay, all the living things we know and we see in our surrounding are the biotic components. Very simple. We have trees, ants, various insects. Okay, so these are what? These are biotic component. Every organism is biotic component. Okay, no matter what the organism is, it will come under biotic components. So the living organisms are biotic components, and the non-living factors like sunlight, wind, rain, water, soil, these are abiotic components. And both the components, biotic plus abiotic will constitute this ecosystem. Okay, this is ecosystem. Abiotic components are very simple. You know this. You have a very good idea of like what is sunlight, what is air, wind, water, soil. You know these things. Now the question here comes is biotic components. We say that biotic components are the living components, and they are animals and or any other organism. Now there are so many organisms present in our surrounding. How will we classify them? Okay, when we explain biotic fact components, we have to be precise. Okay, in upcoming slide of this chapter there are so many things we are going to cover, and for those topics we should know biotic components in detail. So here we will discuss biotic components. Once you know about biotic components, then this chapter will be very easy for you. Okay, the next topic we are going to cover in upcoming video. Biotic components, we have three types: producer, consumer, decomposer. Okay, biotic components are organisms, and these organisms can be of three types: producer, consumer, and decomposer. And how do we classify them as producer, consumer, and decomposer? on the basis of their nutrition. Okay, nutrition, this we have already discussed in chapter 1, life processes. Now we have to understand that how we can classify biotic component into producer, consumer, decomposer based on the nutrition. If we see here the first, producers. Producers means which produces. Okay, and in this case we are discussing about nutrition. So they produce their food on their own. These are known as producers. So these are the organisms which can produce their own food on their own using abiotic components, that is by the process of photosynthesis. We have the best example of producer, that is tree, plant. Plants are the producers. Now if you understood this chapter, the chapter life processes, you would have got your answer that why the plants are producers, because they made their food on their own. And how do they made their food? By the process of photosynthesis. We have this plant. Okay, plant is the example of producers. How do they make their food? With the help of this process, photosynthesis. And we know that what is photosynthesis? In photosynthesis, plants use abiotic factors. What abiotic factor does plant use in photosynthesis? Firstly, we know that what are the abiotic factors? Abiotic factors are the gases which are present in our surrounding, like oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen. These are the gases present in our environment. Okay, so these are abiotic factors. Next, we have component sunlight. Okay, we have sunlight in our surrounding. So that sunlight is again a abiotic factor. Okay, water is abiotic component. So now plant will use these abiotic factor to make their food. What abiotic components plant will use? Plant will use CO2 and plus H2O plus sunlight. Okay, sunlight, and it will make their own food. This is photosynthesis. Plants are the producers, means they produces their food on their own. Plant have the ability to make their food on their own by using abiotic factors, and the process through which they make their food is known as photosynthesis. In photosynthesis they use carbon dioxide and H2O, and these are abiotic factors, and in result they make their food. Most important thing is that plant and certain green algae, these are the only organisms which can produce their food on their own. There is no other organism which can produce their food on their own. So these are the only producers we have in our ecosystem, plants and green algae. And they use that food for their growth, and also they store this food, and the stored food in the plant body, we consume that food, other organisms consume that food. So plants are the ultimate producers. They are the only producers on which every other organism feed. Okay, this is the reason why we are saying that plants are the producers. Now you know the answer why the plants are the producers, because they produce their food on their own. They do not depend on any other organism for their food. Like we human depends on depend on plant for food. We get our food from plant, but plant do not depend on any other organism for their food. They make their food by using abiotic factors. Now you know producers. What are producers? What are the example of producers, and why do we call plants producers? These are the questions we have already answered. Next we have consumers. Okay, this is second type of biotic component. Consumers. Now consumers include all animals which depend on producers directly or indirectly for their food. Consumers means जो consume करेंगे, which consumes. Simple. The organisms which consumes. And as we are discussing on the basis of nutrition, so what will they consume? Obviously they will consume food. So the organisms which consume food directly or indirectly from other organisms, okay, they are known as consumers. They don't have the ability to produce their food on their own. So what they will do, they will get their food from any other organism. So this is the reason why they are known as consumers, as they are consuming other organisms. So they are consumer. We have various types of consumers depending on the what they consume. Okay, some organisms are herbivores, other are carnivores and omnivores. These are the consumers. These are the types of consumers we see. What example we have here? All the animals are consumer except plant and green algae. All other animals, all other organisms are consumers. Three types of consumers we have: herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. In this example, you can write down here human, mice, elephant. Okay, these all are consumers. Now, if we see these if we try to understand these terms, what is herbivores, carnivores, omnivores? Okay, these are types of consumers. We have first herbivores. Okay, we have first herbivores. Herbivores will consume plants. These are plant eaters. The organism which eats plant are known as herbivores. Okay, so now we know what is herbivore. Herbivores are the organisms which eat plants, okay, which consume plants. These are consumers. All right, this we know from our previous discussion that these are consumers, and what will they consume? They will consume plant. Examples. Okay, what are the examples of herbivores? The best example of herbivore is goat and deer. Goat grazes on grass, okay, on grass. So what they eat? They eat plant, grass. So they are the example of herbivore. Next we have carnivores. Carnivores are the flesh eaters. Flesh eaters means animal. They feed on other organisms except plant. They feed on animals, like animals. Okay, they do not feed on plant. What they eat flesh, they eat meat. Okay, so carnivores are the organisms, are the consumers. These are also consumers, right? These are also consumers, as we are discussing different type of consumers. So second type we have here carnivores, and carnivores eat flesh. Okay, they are the flesh eaters, and they feed on organisms and on other organisms for their food requirement, like animals, and they do not eat plants. Okay, only herbivores eat plant and not carnivores. Carnivores will feed on flesh. Examples of carnivores, what examples we have? The best example is tiger. Tiger feeds only on other animal in the forest. They do not eat plant, but they eat other animals. All right, so tiger is an example of carnivore. Now you are clear that how the herbivore differ from carnivores. Okay, what is the difference? That herbivores are the plant eaters and carnivores are the flesh eaters. Third type is what we have: omnivores. Omnivores are also consumer. So omnivores are the organisms which eat plants as well as animals. Okay, they are okay with any type of food. Okay, they are not so selective. They only have to eat. Okay, for the survival. These are plant and animals eater. Any guesses? This is very simple. This is the easiest. We human are omnivores. Okay, many of us are non-veg. If I say in layman language, non-veg. What does it mean, non-veg? Non-veg means they eat they eat flesh. They eat meat. Okay. Same way, this is not the condition, right? Who eat flesh, who eat meat, they won't eat plant-based food. They also eat plant-based food as well as meat, flesh. So they are omnivores. So the example of omnivores is human. Human eat both plant as well as animal-based food. This is the perfect example of omnivore. Now you remember? Now you can easily remember herbivores, which depends on food, which depends on plant for their food, and what are carnivores? Carnivores eat flesh only. They do not eat plants. Okay, and omnivores eat plants and animals both. They are not selective in their food. Okay, they can eat anything. Either it is animal or either it is plant. Okay, that doesn't matter for them. Now, apart from these three types, we have another type. Okay, we have another type, that is parasite. Okay, parasite. Parasite will remain on the body of organism and will feed there for their food requirement. What does parasite do for the food requirement? Parasite feeds on the body of host. Okay, let's say in our case we have lices in our head, so these lices will feed in our scalp. Okay, they will feed in our scalp, they will get their food from our scalp. This is the case, they are parasites. Okay, they live on the body of an organism and from there they get their food. So this is how the case is parasite. The example of parasites live on the body of host, live on the body of an organism, and from that organism they get their food. The example is lice. Now you know the different type of consumers. So with this we have discussed biotic components of ecosystem. What are the biotic ecosystem? What are the biotic components we have discussed? We have discussed producers, we have discussed consumers. In consumer we have discussed herbivores, carnivores, omnivores and parasite. We have three types of biotic component, producers, consumers, decomposers. Now we are left with decomposers. Okay, what are decomposers? Before we move to the this topic, decomposers, let me show you a picture. Here we have to label them, whether they are herbivores, carnivores or omnivores. Okay, what is mice? Mice is carnivore or herbivore? Very simple, carnivores. This is crow. What is crow? Crow is again carnivores. What is cattle? Cattle feeds only on plants. So this is an example of herbivore. Cow is an example of herbivore. Now if we see this picture, in this picture we have crow. Okay, we have this crow and mice. Every one of us know that what the mice eat and what the crow eats. Okay, mice can eat both plant-based food. Okay, in our houses we have noticed that plant eats food. Okay, the normal food we eat, plant-based food. So now the mice can eat plant-based food as well as they feed on meat. So they are omnivores. Same goes with crow. Okay, crow eats chapati and roti as well as meat. Okay, so this is also omnivore. Okay, so here mice eats roti or chapati, are normal food, the vegetarian food which is plant-based, and also they eat flesh. So they are omnivores. Same is the case in case of crow. Crow are also omnivores. Now if you see here cattle, cow. Cow grazes on grass. So they eat plant. So cattle or cow are the example of herbivores. Okay, they directly feed on plant. Now this lion. Lion eat only flesh. Lion eats only meat or other animals. So they are known as carnivores. So here the mice and crow are omnivores. Cattle is cattle is herbivore and lion is carnivore. Okay, this is these are the examples of consumers. Okay, now what next we have? The another important topic we have is decomposers. Okay, decomposers are the third type of consumers. Okay, the first thing is these are consumers. Okay, decomposers are consumers. Decomposers include organisms which decomposes the dead plants and animals. Okay, decomposers feeds on dead plants, animals, okay, which are dead. They eat dead plants and dead animals for their food requirements. Okay, they consume dead things. This is the case in case of decomposers. Or the example of decomposers, if we see the example, we have earthworm. This is the picture of earthworm. It's a decomposer. Okay, it will feed on leaves of plant. Okay, the fallen leaves of plant or other material like small dead insects or dead millipedes. These are very small animals. Okay, which are dead or injurious. Okay, earthworm is example of decomposer. And the other thing is they replenish minerals. Okay, minerals back into the soil. Okay, when they feed on dead animals, what they do, they take a part of that dead thing as their food. Okay, and the remaining part they will degrade that part into minerals, and that minerals are absorbed by soil or plant root. Okay, and those minerals are sent back to the environment, to the ecosystem by plants. So this is how they replenish. This process of giving back minerals into the soil is known as replenishment. Okay, so they replenish minerals. Okay, now you know the function of decomposer, that they replenish minerals. Okay, they send back minerals to the soil and then those minerals are taken up by the plant from the soil. Okay, so now you know decomposers. Next, here we have summary. Okay, what we have discussed in today's lecture. First, we discussed environment. Okay, what is environment? The things which are present in our surrounding. Okay, in surrounding. Okay, in then we have discussed ecosystem. Okay, ecosystem is a community. Okay, community, and members of this community. What is community? In community we have different type of animals. Animal like humans, lions, dogs. Apart from animals, what we have plants. Okay, so these will constitute a community. Okay, the different animals will constitute a community, and that community is ecosystem. So here in ecosystem we have biotic plus abiotic components, and this we have discussed in today's class that biotic are the living components and abiotic are the non-living components. Abiotic are wind, soil, temperature, right? And biotic components are animals, insects, all the living organisms. Now you know what is ecosystem, what is environment. Okay, next we have discussed different type of components of ecosystem. Okay, we have covered components of ecosystem. In ecosystem we have two type of components, biotic, abiotic, and today we have discussed in detail biotic components. Okay, biotic components. In biotic components we discussed, first we have seen producers, and from producers what come in our mind is plant. P producer, P for plant, P for producers. Here we have next consumers, and third is decomposers. And in consumers we have discussed three types of consumers. Okay, what are the three types of consumers? Herbivores, carnivores, omnivores. And you have to remember definition and example of each type of consumer as well as biotic component, producers, decomposers. Okay, so this is what we have covered in this video. In part 2 of this chapter, our environment, we will discuss food chain and food web. And these are the most important topic. Okay, and these are the most important topic, and this we are going to discuss in our upcoming video lecture, part 2 of this chapter. Okay, this is all for today. Thank you. All the best.